Hey guys, so before I get into the technical critiques of this episode, I do want to talk about the something positive, which is the big reveal we get that Kurogiri is revealed to be a Nomu created from the body of Aizawa and Mike's old classmate, Oboro Shirakumo. And with this revelation, to me, season 5 has just officially made the strongest case for why an anime adaptation of My Hero Academia Vigilantes needs to happen. Like, I'm not even kidding. Everything and anything you need to know about who Oboro is, as well as more insight into Aizawa's past and what drives him as a character, they all lie within the pages of that spin-off manga. Like, don't get me wrong, within this episode, we pretty much got a lot of Oboro and of Aizawa's past, but you get so much more just in that manga in itself. But even if that weren't the case, I'd still kind of advocate for an anime adaptation, not only because it's just a good story and sometimes better than the main series, but also because there are a lot of themes and ideas explored in Vigilantes that kind of come back full circle into what the main series will be touching upon beyond this season, and what it's been tackling currently in the manga right now. So yeah, just trust me when I say there's just a lot of reasons for me to say that either go read Vigilantes after watching this episode, or if you haven't, or advocate like hell and hope that one day it gets an anime adaptation. Like in the immediate situation though, I would highly recommend the former over the latter right now because that like any major answers to the questions like people will have about this episode, they pretty much all lie within that spin-off manga. Like, and again, just in general, I kind of really want people to check out Vigilantes, but yeah, as a whole, this episode just kind of made the strongest case for why a Vigilantes anime adaptation is sorely needed right now. Um, and as far as the reveal itself, you can see just how much Mike and Aizawa are trying so desperately during this entire episode to basically believe that none of what they just experienced, none of what happened just now, it was true. But the very moment Aizawa used his powers to awaken the small bit of Oboro inside Kurogiri, it pained them. Like they tried so hard to remain in denial, but and even and even after just wanted to believe none of it was true. But ultimately, they had to admit their friend was alive, but reborn not just as a Nomu, but one of All for One's earliest and most successful experience to make a sentient Nomu. But even after accepting the truth, you can still tell they're trying even now, even after this episode, they're still trying to find any means to believe the opposite. But ultimately, they're still like, Oboro is alive. How like they're so broken after this episode. It's I'll be honest, the anime did such a good job at capturing a lot of the like emotions that from Aizawa and Mike were feeling after this. Like it was so good. Um, and and you can and you can tell like the one like both Mike and Aizawa were affected heavily by this experience, but you can tell Aizawa especially during that whole conversation leading up to Oboro's slight reawakening. You can see just how much it pains him to see the glimpses of Oboro and Kurogiri's speech patterns. Like, I love how this episode also gave, and it also gave so much insight into into Aizawa's and just from like seeing like how much this pains Aizawa. I love how we also get insight into how much Oboro's like influence had basically had basically influenced Aizawa's teaching methods. Like for Aizawa, a lot of what he did in the beginning, a lot of what defined who he was as a teacher, it was all for the purpose of making sure what happened to Oboro doesn't happen to anyone else. Not anyone's children, not any kids, not anyone. Like he genuinely did care, even though he didn't show it. And so when the idea of bringing Oboro's parents into it was brought up, Aizawa just flat out refused, showing even now he's still acting as a teacher by refusing to subject parents to the trauma of seeing that their child is alive but just reborn as a monster. And Yeah, man, this whole situation just shows like the true depravity of All for One. Like in some ways, when you really look at All for One, like what All for One says in this episode, he's basically like a kid experimenting with his toys and wanting to see what happens if he tried to mix and match certain parts of each action figure together, and mix and match each parts of the parts of each action figure together. Except in this case, the action figures are human beings, and it is depraved as fuck. Now, with that said, it feels like each new episode of season 5, there's a new elephant in the room I need to talk about, which is that supposedly next week we will finally be diving into the MO, the Meta Liberation Army arc, aka My Villain Academia. And with the amount of episodes we have left, I think I now have an idea of where this season will end. But the big question I've got right now is how many people are going to fucking care. I mean, I'll be sticking with it for reviewing purposes. Honestly, I'm one of the few outliers who has still found some enjoyment in this season. But how many people are still out there that generally interested in the MLA arc at this point, or what little of this season it will adapt? That's my big question, because from my experience, any drop in a season's investment usually tends to carry over into the next season. So even though the next season is going to adapt some of the most amazing content the manga has produced, my question is, what's the audience going to look like? Is my big question, because there's no denying that for a lot of people, Bones has kind of dropped the ball. But again, is the question is, will this season ultimately be just a bump in the road for people, or has Bones like messed up expectations to the point where they're done with the anime as a whole? Because whether Japan wants to admit it or not, to a certain extent, they do still somewhat need our viewership over here in the West, even if they only judge viewership in their own country. So it's like, yeah, even if they don't, so yeah, we still do make up a large chunk of their audience, honestly. So how's that gonna affect season 6 is my big question, I suppose. Um, also, they it's pretty balls. Honestly, I'll say this much: it's pretty ballsy in order to adapt in order to adapt what happened at the end of this episode, because that was something that wasn't supposed to happen. Again, it's kind of one of those road bumps that happened that happened like afterwards. So it's like it happened after like Meta Liberation Army. So it's like I know their out is that they're going to do a backwards time jump to pretty much 2 months later next episode. But it's like, yeah, that they're really, so I guess that's their out. But yeah, a little iffy, honestly, still. Um, with that said, though, I do want to take special mention of the scene at the beginning of the episode, because on surface level, it's really just everyone getting ready for class like any other day. But the fact that they were organized and proactive enough to get ready without Aizawa needing to tell them anything, or hell, even before he got into class, shows just how much Class A has developed in terms of their response time. And little things like that not only translate into how they act upon situations and make decisions as heroes in future arcs and chapters, but it also shows how everyone has used that accumulative knowledge through their individual experiences to even reach this point. And it's through those experiences where they've reached this point of becoming like their own heroes and their own like and developed as heroes in general. Also, as an aside, that moment of Mina putting two and two together with Ochiko's gift to Izuku was just amazing how it was animated, and I do like how we overall did get a little bit of an expansion of the conversations between Class A in this episode. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share this video around, guys. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.